Hello, I'm Michele Pasotti. I'm a lutenist and I'm the founder of La Fonte Musica. We will come to Canada. We are very excited about that. We will come first to Montreal and then to Vancouver this October. A concert in Vancouver will be on the 25th, and we will bring our Dante Nova program, a program on Dante's poems and Ars Nova. And we are very, very happy of that. Yes, I'm deeply in love with the 14th century repertoire, especially the Italian one, but not only, of course, all the we started already almost 18 years ago, so quite a long time ago, devoting ourselves especially to this repertoire, which I find a very the difference I find with other repertoires is that, of course, it uses musical devices that then are in a way lost in later centuries. So the flavor, the general flavor of this music is, as I say, sometimes a little bit exotic to our ears, in a good sense, in the sense that it sounds fresh and new. At least is what I find every time I look at this repertoire. And then it's the music full of life, imagination, rhythm, different colors. It's really a very lively music, I found. It's so easy to me to think of this music as my contemporary. I don't think it as a 700 years or 600 years music. But of course, I respect it. So I studied it in a philological way. I tried to see it in the context where it was created, and our concert in Vancouver will be exactly around that. But when I listen to it and when we played together, I really feel that it's a music very, very of my age. The Ars Nova music is a very well-written music in the sense that many times there is a tendency to think to medieval music. Let's say I don't like this term because it's too big. So 1,000 years, it makes no sense. But I mean, when we think to medieval music, sometimes we have the tendency to think that it's music where there is a lot of part written by us, by the modern performers. This is not the case for us because in the manuscripts you find so many informations on the actual performances. It's much more precise, for example, of an average Baroque piece, I mean, in writing. So a lot of rests, respirations, or cross rhythms between voices are all written out. It's very precise because they were, I think my idea is that they were so enthusiastic of this new tool that they had, that they called Ars Nova themselves, which was the new writing of the music, a precise, very precise writing that becomes eventually at the end of the 14th century incredibly precise, madly precise, crazy. So they arrived to write the most complicated music and most complicated things in order, I think, with Anne Stone, who is a major musicologist for this period. She's teaching in New York, and she thinks that the most difficult rhythms that you can find in this music, and maybe this music is also famous for that, are basically written out rubato. So they thought that they can represent on paper what normally you think you cannot represent. And you say to the performer, okay, you see that on the page, but you should, do it, for example, as Caccini says, with sprezzatura or things like that. But in this time, you find in some authors, in some pieces, really a very high degree of precision on paper. you don't find the instrumentation, which for us, for our mentality nowadays, is quite important to say, oh, you don't have the instrumentation, so you have to do a lot of work of your own. In a way, yes. On the other hand, you have a lot of iconography, and from iconography, you can see which instruments were more used than others. And for example, fiddles are everywhere. So we have two fiddles. Lutes are also very much present. Harp at the same degree of a lute. And then, of course, you have a few other instruments like organetto, clavicimbalum, but flutes here and there, but not so many. In these are the main instruments. So you basically have a quite clear path in a way. I do this work myself. I go on the manuscripts. I think it's very, very important to have a direct relation with the manuscripts. Our groups is called La Fonte Musica, and fonte in Italian means fountain, but also the source, the musical source. So to have a direct relationship with that is very important. And then I do my transcriptions myself. I think it's you can transcribe quite carefully all these signs. What is perhaps more difficult for a modern performer who doesn't read directly from the sources is the relationship with the bars. We are so much used to the bars and giving to bars a quality meaning. I always say you have to think of it as a quantity, not as a quality. So if you have the first beat, it doesn't mean that brings an accent. So you have to really go with the phrase, with the words, and shape things with that. And when you see it on manuscripts all the time, it's very clear because you see the contour, you see the words perfectly placed. This is another thing of Trecento, which I like so much. And then what you lose during the 15th century, because manuscripts become less precise as you progress in the 15th century. And you arrive at the end of the 15th century, beginning of the 16th century, where it's very normal that a performer has to adapt the text or to put it because there is no text, but you know that you have to put it. But in the old sources, in the sources of Trecento music, many of them, not all of them, but many of them have an extremely precise word-text relation written in the manuscript. So this is also very interesting in order to understand the rhetorics of the time. I mean, many things are so important thanks to this precise notation. I thought to this program during lockdown, during the lockdown in 2020. I started from the Divine Comedy, which is a work that I love so much. Being an Italian is really the foundation of our language. Until now, also for modern Italian, more than 7% of Italian comes directly from the Divine Comedy, so it's quite a lot. So, of course, Dante's musicality and the verse is already music in itself. But we know that at his time, it was not at all common to read it as we read books nowadays, but it was much more common to sing it. So to sing Dante's and the endecasillabi was absolutely normal at the time. On some melodic, formulas that unfortunately we lost completely. We don't have them. But I thought, as a part of, while I was reading the Divine Comedy, I noticed, of course, now, after so many years into music, how much music is named in the poem. So how many times music is evoked as a very important in very important moments, many times related to the appearance or disappearance of a character. So a character, especially in Purgatorio and Paradise, is announced before with music and after by sight. A beautiful example is the beginning of Purgatorio. Of course, hell is completely without music. You can only hear screams and people crying and desperation everywhere. And it's the sign that things have changed is that he arrived in another place. He doesn't know where he is. He's on a beach. And of course, it's not Inferno anymore, but he doesn't see anything. He only hears music. He hears a chant, which is in Israel, in Exit to Israel, Egypt, a famous chant for the Easter, because it's a passage, is a passage chant. Of course, the one who are passing are the souls arriving in the Purgatorio on a boat, but he doesn't see that. He just hears the singing, and then he sees that there is a boat with the souls, there is an angel on the boat, and etc. So it's very powerful image that things are completely changed, and music is the first thing that announces that. So these moments are so powerful that I thought it would be fantastic to have a program with music. We don't have so much music from exactly Dante's time, which means the end of the 13th century, the first 25 years of the 14th century. So I founded some music from that time, but then I stretched it to the whole 14th century, relating the novelty of Dante's language to what he forged with his poems, and the novelty of the music in Ars Nova. And you can add another pillar to that, which we actually did in some concerts, which is Giotto's painting, which for the first time brings to the expression and all the human feelings so visible on the paintings. And this is exactly what happens in the Ars Nova pieces. Yeah, there's so much of this expression that comes out much more than the music before that. There will be some screens, not so many, but yeah, of course, in principle, you shouldn't have music for hell, but there are some references in a few. Of course, there will be much less music in the hell part, and then much more in the Purgatorio, and even more in the Paradise. It's very interesting because in the Purgatorio you have a perfect balance between music evoked for let's say courtly love and sacred love. There is a very good balance. In the Paradise you only have sacred love, and also his terrestrial love, Beatrice, is put on a sacred dimension. But in hell, since there is no love, except Paolo and Francesca, this very, very moving episode, there is no love, there is no compassion, there is no, except his own. He feels compassion for the ones punished in hell. For example, for the suicidal people, which at the time, of course, with the ideas they had at the time, were put in hell. But he has a lot of compassion for that. He thinks that it's not so just that they are there in a way. But music is referred to in some passages. For example, there is a passage in the Ulysses chant, 26 of Inferno, where he starts the chant of Ulysses with a quotation that you could read on the walls of the Palazzo del Bargello in Florence, the palace of the Comune. And this inscription was, rejoice, Florence, because you are the best city, etc., etc., etc. So it takes this inscription, and on the third line, instead of saying rejoice, rejoice, it says, you are so famous, but the place where you are most famous is hell, because you did so many bad things. But this exact quotation is used by an Ars Nova composer called Paolo da Firenze in one of his madrigals, of course, not with the twist that Dante gives it, but with the rejoice thing. So we thought about a few pieces like that. And then we have there is a fantastic motet by Machaut called Livoris Veritas, which is dedicated to the devil. It's a description of Satan. And so we used it to end the Inferno because it's an evocation of of Satan. So a few pieces here and there. There is another funny things, but we will leave it to the concert. So. I just spoke about the beginning of Purgatorio, and in the same chant, the second, just after this beginning, he meets a very, very good friend of his who was named Casella. And this Casella was a troubadour. So was a poet singer. And what does this very good friend of his does when he sees Dante is directly sings to him one of Dante's poems. So Dante is very much moved by the fact that this friend is singing a poem written by himself. Unfortunately, we have the poem, but we don't have that music, because much of that music was improvised, and there were masters of improvising music on a written text. But there is a piece by Landini which has more or less the same title, and it really translates for me very well this atmosphere. And all the Purgatorio, you're very right, is I think is the most musical of the three canticles, because it brings in one the human dimension and the sacred dimension, while the paradise is only divine and of course is magnificent, but it's only something about things that we cannot experience in our life. And in Purgatorio, we have many things. There are, for example, many women in Purgatorio who arrive singing or leave singing, and he doesn't see them, he hears them before, or he dreams about them. There is one, he falls asleep at a certain point, and he dreams about a lady who is singing in his dreams. I think, yes, there are witnesses that he had a musical education. I recall that, but I'm not 100% sure, but that I'm positive in that. It was absolutely, if you think about, we all know that the Divine Comedy is 11 syllables per, I think, 17,000 times, something like that. And they are rhymed in a special way. And when you read it also, it's very much dealing with music. You cannot write in a way that without a musical ear. It's absolutely impossible. So I think he had a very, very good musical ear, and he speaks about music so much that it must have been very important for him. One thing that I think it's important for the for our audience today. That could be a misunderstanding, but I would like to try to say a word on that. Music in Dante is always associated with sweetness, with high things. For this reason, is not cannot be in hell. But for us nowadays, it could be close to something, you know, sweet in a cheap sense. I mean, it's not that kind of. It's just that his consideration is this: there is so much sorrow in our life, in our experience, in our everyday experience, that music is always something that can bring our souls up from this from pain. I mean, but not in a I mean, in a, you know what I mean. It's not something naive. I mean, there is an awareness that music can be really a very faithful companion in this sense. It's always related to something that brings up our experience. And I think it's a very I liked it when I was reading it through the poem. Thank you very much for the invitation and for this interview. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.